Welcome to the Women Money Business Podcast. I'm Dr. Bal Matharu, and today I've got with me Bal Matharu, who is a wellbeing entrepreneur. So I'm really excited to talk to you today, Bal, because I've been reading, well, I'm saying I use the term reading. I've been looking at like tapping, breathwork and things like that. So I'm really excited to see what actually that means. So would you mind just telling the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Preeti, for having me on this podcast today. And just a little bit about myself. I am actually an advanced respiratory physiotherapist. I have been a physio now for 25 plus years. I joined initially doing my rotations back in the early 2000s across the hospitals of Birmingham and the West Midlands. And then I specialised in respiratory medicine and absolutely loved respiratory medicine and did quite a fair bit of work within communities, building community services in asthma, in bronchiectasis and conditions like that. And then COVID came and being a respiratory specialist, I stretched myself a little bit too thin, just wanting to help out as much as I could, knowing that I had all the tools to be able to help other people. So I joined a community service on top of the intensive care work that I was doing. I joined a community service and I also helped out with elective surgery as well. So I was working approximately 70-hour weeks.
Wow.
And I continued doing that for about 2 years. And at that point, I burnt out. It was inevitable, basically. So at Burnout, I then left the NHS trying to figure out if there was a different way. What I noticed whilst I was working in intensive care is why some people were coming in with no past medical history, but on double ventilator support. So what was it about their condition that they were requiring a lot more support than your average person who may have had a lot of comorbidities, but not actually coming into intensive care? So that kind of led me down the route of lifestyle medicine. And I ended up having a look and a delve into lifestyle medicine. I qualified as a health coach there. And then that also got me kind of looking at energy medicine, root cause analysis medicine. And again, qualification after qualification, you want to make sure that you're credible. And then I ended up I'm currently in the middle of doing a PhD in breathwork, how breathwork and certain types of breathwork can reverse certain chronic conditions. So that's the body of the work that I'm doing at the moment, in the middle of kind of, clinical work right now. And I also kind of continue with the physiotherapy role as a physio lead for a national service as well. So there's a lot of things going on there alongside the business as well.
I love it. Like a lady after my own heart. Like I'm just like, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, you should be doing tick, tick, tick. So
it's so true. You take on all these roles and then you realize later thinking, okay, what can I handle out of all this?
Absolutely. So I'm totally with you. I think if I was in your sector, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. There's a few questions that I'd like to ask based on what you just said. First of all, you mentioned the term lifestyle medicine. Could you tell me a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, sure. Lifestyle medicine is actually originated from the way people in the blue zones live. So if you look at certain areas within the world, there's 6 places. And I mean, I could probably say, I think it's Sardinia is one of them. There's 3 in China and the eastern countries. There's
What's
one.
The blue zone? Well, sorry, before you.
What blue zones are is an area where the population is actually living to longer ages disease free. So they've been studied extensively. And by studying them, they've actually had a look at the habits and the lifestyles that they've got, that they adopt, which allows them to live healthier for longer. And there's 6 primary foundational pillars that support that lifestyle. One is diet, as you can imagine, a good diet that supports your body, exercise, movement and exercise. Then there's sleep, making sure that you've got good sleep hygiene, stress management. There's relationships and making sure that we're just basically kind of in communities that support us. And then the last one is no substance abuse. So just taking all those substances out of your habits. So if you've got habitually kind of bad substance abuse, maybe looking at withdrawing from some of those. So that's lifestyle medicine. By living with those pillars of lifestyle medicine, you'll find that your biomarkers are a lot better, and also that you're kind of walking towards disease free, or you're enabling your body to function at a level which is more disease free, should I say.
Okay, so I suppose on the back of that, you've just mentioned biomarkers. Could you explain what biomarkers are?
So biomarkers are basically the levels within your body. So, for example, biomarkers can be your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your blood pressure. It could be just the way that you are breathing, and the other ones are heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is a really good one to show stress resilience. So heart rate variability is, if you have a look at your heart scans, the heart scans on an ECG, it's just looking at the time between the two high points. And if you look at those, what we need is variability. So at times we're stressed, but how quickly do we come back down to a kind of calm and restorative function? So it's just looking at those peaks and how often can we come up and come down again, and how often do we go up and how quickly do we come down again. And the higher the heart rate variability, the better our bodies are functioning.
And would you say, from what you've just explained to me, that this could be more preventative? So it's not always that something's gone wrong and you're trying to fix it. If you were already living that lifestyle, you could prevent anything sort of disease-wise potentially happening.
Yeah. The more we adopt these principles of lifestyle medicine, the healthier our trajectory is. Okay. So it's really, really fundamental to actually start looking at the way we eat, the way we consume food. We all know that, convenience food is really, really readily available these days. It's about making healthier choices. It's about getting some movement in. And that doesn't mean exercise per se, going to the gym, and hitting the gym for about 25, 30 minutes every single day. It means just get up and move. So it means have something to eat, and the carbs that you've eaten, let's work them off. Have a 10-minute walk, or maybe dance around the kitchen while you're cleaning. Things like that. Simple things, fun things. Community, that's really important. So it's not just about your own kind of people around you, but your wider social circle as well. And also your own barriers in terms of what defenses are you putting up? When are you saying no? When are you saying, actually, I can do this, but at times when you don't want to, are your boundaries there for you to be able to say no? So it's looking after yourself, looking after the next, and then the next, and it's just making sure you've got that support circle around you, but it all starts with you.
And in terms of, you mentioned community, why is community so important in this?
So, yeah, absolutely. So basically, we're innately community beings. We thrive in communities. So if you go back to our prehistoric ancestors, if you weren't part of a community, you were left in silo and you die. So we are community beings, and it's really important for us to connect. And they've actually shown research now where loneliness is a big killer, bigger probably than smoking. Really? So yeah, loneliness is, it's like being left in silo, left alone to cope by yourself. And if you're not having that kind of community connection, it goes on a deeper level, actually. There's a lot of research that's now come out in terms of neuroception. And neuroception is a term coined by Dr. Stephen Porges, who came up with a polyvagal theory, which was a stress theory. And that polyvagal theory, he talks about neuroception and us having all this neuroceptive field around us. So, when you've walked into a room and you get that energy of you're not in the right place, or maybe there's an off energy and you're like, well, what am I doing here? I don't want to be in here. It's that neuroceptive field picking up other people's energy. But in the same way it picks up energy in that kind of scenario, you can also pick up like energy. And in that sense, you feel you're kind of, you're on the same page, if you see what I'm saying. So I'll give you an example. I start all my meetings off by getting everyone on the same page and making sure that we're kind of co-regulating with each other.
So we're not.
So I do it through breathing. There's a lot that I do just through breathing, basically, because breathing is a tool that we can all access. It's very closely related to our stress function. And if we can bring that stress function down and all be on the same page, we're co-regulating in a better kind of, in a better way, I should say. So the way I do that is just by, as soon as everyone's on the meeting, you take some breaths in, and you just take some breaths in where you're exhale is a little bit longer than your inhale. That way, you're actually stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system and just bringing your calm on, and that way, again, you're co-regulating with the people that you're breathing with. So
that's interesting. So when I was pregnant,
mhm.
I'm very much a person that I'm always busy. Like, I just like to be busy, and that's the way I am. And sort of practices like yoga or Pilates or breathing and stuff. I'm just like, oh, it's a whole load of woo woo.
Mhm.
Like, who's got time for that? That's for people who have just got like nothing else to do and stuff. So I remember going to antenatal class, and
Uh-huh.
they were saying, they were asking me to close my eyes. Imagine I'm on a beach, and there's a string. Somebody's got a needle with like a thin string, and just blow at that string. I remember going with my husband, and then I looked at him and I was like, let's just leave. I said, like, I'm not, this is not for me.
Right.
I'm not that person that's going to sit and imagine myself and be all zen. Because
Yeah.
I've got stuff to do. So like, and he was just like, just try it. Like,
Yeah.
you're here now, just go through the motions. So like, I did begrudgingly. And I
Uh-huh.
was just like, and that was it. And I just did it, walked away. I was like, what a load of whatever.
Oh gosh, you sound like me initially.
And then fast forward, like a few months later, I was in labour, and that image just came to me,
Right.
and I just thought, like, do you know what? Nothing is helping right now,
Yeah.
so I'm going to just try everything. And I just remember just closing my eyes and seeing that thread, that string,
Right.
on a beach, and blowing at it, and
Uh-huh.
it regulated my breathing without me realizing. I was, and then I've had three children, and so each pregnancy that has helped me so much. But I only link it to pregnancy.
Right.
So when I sort of came across your work, and you were talking about breath work, and I think it is quite trending now as well.
It is.
In sort of the social media space, I've seen things pop up about breath work, and I just had I literally dipped my toe into reading about it a little bit, and I just thought, you know what, I'm not going to read any further. I'm going to speak to Val, because like, this is what you do. So you mentioned how you can sort of manage your stress levels with breath work, and that it's scientifically proven that this actually works. Is there things that you can recommend that can be done just on a daily basis, just
Yeah.
simple things?
Absolutely. If I can just take you back a little
Yeah, of
bit, if
course,
you
yeah.
don't mind. So basically, I grew up as a second generation Asian who, with parents who came over from Africa
Mm,
and we settled over here, or they settled over here. And my dad was always heavily into spirituality,
okay.
very, very spiritual, not religious, but spiritual. And that I ran away from that. I thought, this is all woo woo. I can't do this. This is not me, and I ran into science.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's why I went into physiotherapy. And it's just really bizarre that all these years later, I've kind of come back to where science meets spirituality,
Yeah,
and breath work is a big part of that. It's about kind of getting back into your own body and understanding that everything happens from within. And to do that, you always use your breath to try and get in touch. Now, in terms of the way society is at the moment, we've got a lot of external stresses. And that has an impact. I don't know if you've heard the term allostatic load.
no.
It's the amount of stress that we place, or the number of different stresses that we have that we place at a cellular level, and what's happening at that level. So allostatic loads are increasing with our, like I mentioned, with our foods, lack of movement, sleep's a huge one, lack of relationships and connection, and substances. They are all increasing our allostatic load. And that means that our stress levels are forever at a high. So we're operating at a higher stress level, and that literally just increases and increases. You have an email, that'll go even higher. You have a conversation, that'll go even higher. Our to-do list, it goes higher. So how do we manage that? We can manage that by doing a 1-minute breathing exercise, where we can. So if you imagine our body is a computer, our brain is the processor. We have two processors, not one. The one processor is your stress system, and
Okay.
your other processor is your recovery system, your parasympathetic nervous system. So, and we spend all our day, every day, either in one or the other. So you'll always be in one or the other. It's not a case of they'll switch off. The processes are always on. You're flitting within one or the other. So
that's stressful in itself. Just knowing that's stressful in itself.
It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. And most of the time we want to spend our time in that parasympathetic mode, because that's when we've got blood flow into our gut area, where our immune system's switched on, where we've got our digestive system functioning properly, our detox system is functioning properly, our reproductive system is functioning properly. When we step into the stress mode, it's that analogy of tigers and bears. So, a tiger comes into the room. What's going to happen? All the blood flow from your center is going to go into your muscles in order for you to fight or flight. So everything internally switches off, and you've got all this blood flow into your muscles ready to get going. And we're spending a lot of our time in that stress mode. So now you can imagine why we've got digestive issues, why we've got immune system issues, why we've got reproductive issues, and also why our detox centers are switched off. So if we don't come off that stress, which is only meant to be a short-term response, our chemical hormones, they're not working properly. Our endocrine system is actually enabling a lot more cortisol to be in our systems, which increases like the pro-inflammatory response that breaks down our bodies. So it's really important for us to just take 1 minute every often and just come back down to that parasympathetic mode. And the way to do that is how I just mentioned. If you take a breath in through your nose, get really present into the moment. And it's about grounding yourself right now. Take a breath in through the nose, and then you just breathe out longer than you breathe in. So if your inhale is 2 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds. If your inhale is 3 seconds, breathe out for 6 seconds. And if you inhale, for example, is 4 seconds, you can extend it to that, then breathe out for 8 seconds. So by just doing that for a minute, you've changed your state and you've gone into the parasympathetic mode. So, and that's basically where we want to spend most of our time. So all our systems are online, not offline. And that allows us to actually function in the right way, but also cognitively as well. So there's reasons why you'd come into stress mode voluntarily as well. And that is like to build up hormesis, and the hormesis response is where you're actually going into stress in terms of like exercise, that'll put you into stress, but it's short-term stress to build your stress resilience. So you can actually increase that heart rate variability. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I suppose often on the back of that, it's just come to my mind. Like I remember reading about this guy that does like laughing therapy. So is that something similar? Like
absolutely.
I've seen like videos of them just like belly laughing and stuff. And I'm like, I love that. Like I wish I could do that.
It's amazing, and I absolutely agree. Laughing therapy, singing therapy, just kind of those mantras, they all really help with taking those bigger breaths in. You're taking a larger breath and then vocalizing it with your voice. So it's fantastic. It's really good.
And in terms of, you mentioned sort of about your dad and the spirituality side of things, can we sort of trace back where breathwork came from? Because to me, obviously, I'm also Asian and sort of been raised in an Asian household. You listen and you hear things, and there's a lot of meditation that goes on. And I think when you're meditating, you then also you internalize, but then the breath is involved in meditation. Is it something that has come from sort of Asian culture? Do we know, or it has?
Absolutely, it has, yeah. So if you go back to ancient India times, they have things like pranayama. Again, it's now pranayama yoga. It's been adapted a little bit, but pranayama is basically attention on the breathing. When you put your attention on the breathing, you're present in the body. The thing is that a lot of us spend a lot of time in the past or in the future. Always these thoughts that are going on. There's 80,000 odd thoughts happening every single day, and they are either based in the past from the memories of what had happened, or based in the future in the fear of what may happen. And we're not actually spending much time in the present moment. When you're in the past or in the future, you're actually going into survival mode. You're going into that kind of fight flight response and hitting the stress response off. If you come into the present moment and realize, actually right now I'm safe. I've got no danger. There's no fear here. I'm in a safe space. And that allows you to come back into that restoration kind of healing mode. So spirituality, there's a lot of scientific evidence now in terms of how it's related to science, and spirituality kind of come together, but with the breath. And it's phenomenal work in itself. And for people that have done that work, it is truly amazing. And the other thing that we do with breath work, it's not just about reducing your stress, it's also about accessing some subconscious kind of beliefs. So I do breath work journeys, and I hold them quite regularly, again in the Midlands and down south as well in London. And what we do is I utilize the breath to get people into an altered state of consciousness by actually changing their pH values within their body.
Okay.
And that way you switch off your cognitive mind and you drop into your subconscious mind. And by dropping into subconscious, you can start reprogramming and visiting some of those old beliefs that are keeping you stuck in that
stressed.
That stress response.
Yeah.
So, and it's really interesting how our bodies get stuck in survival because I mentioned your memories are stuck in the past, or you're fearing the future. What keeps us there is our subconscious mind. So we have no conscious control over it. Our mind's going to keep ticking, keep ticking, keep ticking. So if we're always in
there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. It makes you think of, oh, that person who said whatever to me, and it makes you think, it makes you think it's in the in the present right now. And the thing is, just by that thought alone, your body will react like it's right now.
Absolutely.
So if it's reacting, and so if it's reacting like that from right now, we've got to address the stressors. What are those stressors that's keeping us blocked in those memories of the past? And that's usually down to things like thoughts, fears, emotions that get caught up in the body. Emotions don't happen on a conscious level, they happen on a body level. Emotions get stuck in the body, they cause dysfunction within the body. And they get caught up in things like fascial tissue, which is your connective tissue in your body. So by doing breathwork journeys and setting the intention that this is what you want to address, and then using the breath to get there into your subconscious mind, you can then access those subconscious memories to allow yourself to let go of those patterns.
It's almost like going into, like, the analogy or the metaphor for me would be going into an office, opening the filing cabinet and just filing everything away and just shutting the door and thinking, well, lock it and say, well, that filing cabinet, I don't need to look at that now. And I think from what you've said, like, it's quite a full circle moment, I think, for society, because we live in such a rapid digital world. And I mean, in my lifetime, I've seen changes from having a cassette player to now I can listen to music on my phone. Like, it's like mind blowing, and the internet. And whereas that technology is amazing and it's so revolutionary, it's life changing. We as humans aren't built for that. Sort of on a spiritual level, on a body level, and really, it's quite, I suppose, it's quite fulfilling to hear that we're going back to our core, our center, and back to those old or principles or ancestral principles of just keeping it really simple, being really organic, and just sort of connecting with yourself, which and I'll be honest, like, probably I'd say if you spoke to me about this 2-3 years ago, I'd be like, it's not, I don't know what she's on about, like, it's not for me, this isn't. Whereas I think, I don't know whether it's an age thing, I don't know what it is, but I think you get to a certain point in your life where you just think, what am I doing this all for? What, like, I'm working, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I'm stressed. How do I manage that stress? And then you start maybe looking into, or things pop up on your social media, because algorithms are great like that, they show you things. So it's really interesting to hear why this works, and it totally makes sense to me as to why it does work. One thing that I would like to sort of ask your opinion on is that my husband and I were speaking just a couple of weeks ago. I think we watched like Diary of a CEO, one of the episodes, and he was like saying, "Well, did you see the one about the guy that said that every morning he goes outside onto his garden barefoot and he just stands there with his feet?" And again, if my husband told me that about a year or two ago, I'm like, well, he obviously needs to get checked out somewhere, because he's something's going on there. like, just put your shoes on, go to work, stop wandering around in the garden. but now, because I'm in a different place, and I'm saying to my husband, you just want to connect to the earth, and I'm like, and he was like, that's what they said. And my husband is like no way a spiritual kind of guy. He's very like fact based, like
Sure.
I can see it, feel it, touch it, it's real. If it's not, then forget it. But he was like saying after watching that episode, even he was saying there's something about that. Have you sort of, do you know
Yeah,
much about that?
absolutely. Yeah, and you know what? I'm just going to speak to what you've just mentioned there as well, that there is now a rise in collective consciousness, which is why we're actually now coming to the point where we've had enough. And post-COVID, we're seeing a lot more of it. People are looking for alternative ways to actually get connected, and not just connected externally, but connected within. And so there's a large kind of body of work going on, not just scientifically, but also people are just finding it. People are finding that if I do this, how does it help me? And people are looking for alternative ways to actually get in tune. So grounding is fantastic because grounding, there's a negative core energy within the earth itself. Right. And that negative energy actually comes up into your body. We're electrical beings at the end of the day. On a cellular level, every single cell, we've got an electrical current. So if we think of it like that, we are just electrical beings.
Yeah.
So, but we are, with our stress levels, we're positively charged. And what we need to do is, if we can ground the way that your husband's just, identified with there, we're allowing that negative earth energy to come up into our system and just really ground us down. And there's a lot of research done behind this. I think it was about 20 or 30 odd years ago, where it was an electrician that actually plugged something into the ground, and he put a wire and put it into his bed. And he found that his sleeping was a lot better just by actually allowing the earth's grounding energy to come into his bed. And now you actually, and I prescribe to this, we've got grounding sheets for our bed, and we sleep so much better. I measure my sleep using, all sorts of gadgets, but I found that I'm sleeping more in REM sleep, in deep sleep, just by having a grounding sheet there. I'm more restored. Yeah, they are brilliant.
You can buy those like on Amazon or something.
You can, yeah. I mean, there's some really good websites, and I can recommend you which ones. But there are some really great places that have done the research behind it, are credible, and they've got grounding sheets, which all my family use now.
That's amazing. Like, and like you say, we are just electrical beings, because when our heart stops, what do? They
absolutely
to get it back going again.
Yeah,
that's really fascinating. So thank you so much, Bella. I could talk to you, as you can probably imagine, for hours. Because
I can talk about this for hours as well.
And it's just such a fascinating topic, and obviously, like we mentioned, it is quite current at the moment. I think rightly so, because I think people have got to a point where you don't want to just medicate yourself, you want to prevent yourself from having that medication. And before medicine evolved to be able to treat XYZ, we were just simple beings, and we had to manage our stress somehow that way. So I think this is like a movement, like you say, there is like a collective of people. I think it is a massive movement, but also in the right direction. And it's all, for me, I think it just sounds very organic. And just going back to the simpler things in life. So even though the world's moving so quick, actually, just appreciate the beauty of what's around you.
It's so true. Just stop and have a look at what's around you. And just on that note, I mean, the NHS formed like in the 1950s, not for what it was built not for what it's dealing with right now. It was built for infections, it was built for trauma, but not for the burden of chronic disease that we see right now. So it's going to put a plaster on it. So whatever it is, the conditions, whether it's diabetes, whether it's obesity, whether it's autoimmune disease, they are all going to have a plaster on them. Not fix the symptoms, fix the problem, but fix the symptoms. So But what we need to start looking at is using all these tools, these holistic tools. How can we actually get to the bottom of the problem itself? And how can we start looking at reversing that? Because we don't want to be on a pill. One pill leads to another and to another and to another, as we know, just because of the side effects from it. And the whole burden on the NHS needs to be reduced, which leads me back to the original lot of work that I wanted to do coming out of ITU was very much around, okay, why are people a lot more unwell and ending up in on a double ventilator when they have no past medical history? And that is because of lifestyle, and it's because of that stress load and the burden on their stress system. So if we can start coming down from stress, utilizing the simple art of our breath, which is a free resource, we don't even need to do anything. So if we can start utilizing that a little bit more, we can actually start bringing that stress response down. And I do have what I'll send to you for your listeners, a PDF, a cheat sheet that you can actually have there's 6 different breathwork exercises there. You only have to do them for a minute and you'll find yourself changing state. For example, if you want to focus more, what exercise you can do. If you want to go into a meeting and you feel yourself a little bit stressed and you need to present, what exercise you can do. So there's different exercises on there, 1 minute exercises, and see how your state changes.
Wow, that'd be amazing. And people can work with you one-to-one as well, Val, is that
They
correct?
can, yeah. So I do one-to-one work, but I'm also in the middle at the moment of launching a course because I also know people are in a lot more nervous system dysregulation. They're dysregulated in that stress state. And as I mentioned, they're dysregulated because they're stuck in that stress state because of previous traumas. So if we can start addressing some of those traumas and get them hooked off that stress response and make their body feel safe again, we can start coming back into restoration where their body can repair and they can actually get their immune system and their detoxification system back online. And to do that work, it's a 6-week program, which I'll be launching on the 1st of July. And it just helps people kind of come at that stress and become more authentic as well, authentic within themselves. And, there's a lot more to this. I work with high-performing women as well to come out of that hustle culture because we're so used to that male energy of kind of pushing. Well, what about allowing? What about stopping to receive as opposed to pushing to make things fit? There's a little bit about divinity in here as well, just allowing to receive and sit back and just enabling as opposed to going.
I think a lot of people will resonate with that. I think, especially the hustle culture, because that is the culture at the moment.
It is.
So what I'll do for everybody that's listening is I'll attach all the links to how you can get in contact with Val, and then I'll add the link to the document, the PDF document, and then obviously if you want to connect with Val and want to learn more, like I do, about sort of everything breathwork related, then you can find everything in the show notes. So thank you so much for today, Val. I really appreciate your time, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you so much.